Okay. Za, please give me permission to record the French. So hello, everyone. A warm welcome to you from the Geneva Learning Foundation. I am Charlotte Mbuh, and my guest for today's lightning chat is Madhava Balakrishnan. He is a medical officer in charge of global vaccine safety at the World Health Organization's headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland. And he will be talking with us today on vaccine safety, a practical perspective. We know you are busy. That is why we invented the lightning chat. It takes 15 minutes of your time, and we only extend if you have more questions. You can decide if this topic is important for you. If it is relevant to your work, then you will find links to learn more. I am going to ask Madhava the first questions, but I'll be looking to you to ask your own questions and share your comments in the chat. You may also raise your hand if you wish to speak. For French speakers, please click on the little globe icon at the bottom of your screen to select interpretation, and then click on the Français, French language, to select the French language, and click on cut original audio to hear only what is being said in the French language. Right now, I'm going to go right away to the first questions. I want to say hello, Madhava, and warm welcome to you. Please, can you briefly introduce yourself and tell us what is vaccine safety and why is it important in the achievement of IA 2030 goals?
Thanks, Charlotte. First of all, I want to just thank the Geneva Learning Foundation for giving me this opportunity to kind of join on this very, very interesting topic, and also on this very interesting approach of discussing with people. In fact, this is much more interesting than your regular kind of meetings. Now, the thing is, just a quick introduction about myself. I am Dr. Madhava. I work in the, as you mentioned, in the WHO headquarters in the vaccine safety team. I've been here since the year 2011. I'm originally from India, and I basically specialize in setting up surveillance systems from the ground to the national level, and also to collect data and bring it to the global level. And now I have been working, I've kind of spent almost 1/5 of my life on vaccine safety. So back to you. And okay, can I just have that slide which you were just talking about, which will have to be able to answer that first question of yours, which you just wanted me to talk about. Now, please remember, this is a very, very important slide, what you have actually put up. In fact, Charlotte told me that we are not supposed to have slides, but then I just thought all my questions would be devoted around what we are just talking about. Now, first of all, please remember something. When you look at from the Immunization Agenda 2030 perspective, the idea behind Immunization Agenda 2030 is actually to have a world where everyone, everywhere, at any age, fully benefits from vaccines for good health and well-being. So that is why, if you just look at what you see in front of you in that slide, is something called an AEFI surveillance cycle. So what happens is, once the orange arrow which you see at the top is where you get vaccinated, and immediately after vaccination, at the time of vaccination, you are told, please expect that you will be able to get this kind of an adverse event like pain at injection site, you can get fever, sometimes you can get convulsions and things like that. So when you go back home in the evening, or maybe after 2 days or after a week or something like that, you may identify the adverse event. So that is called the detection, the stage of detection, what you see in at the 1 o'clock position over there. Now, once your case is detected or identified, then there is a stage where it is brought to the notice of the health system, and that is actually the stage of notification, where you can see the lady taking the baby to the health facility. Then the next stage. So once the child is brought to the notice of the patient comes to the notice of the health system with an adverse event, then the next stage is the stage where the event gets reported. Now, what do we mean by the word reporting? It actually means you're documenting the essential features of those cases, and you're classifying the cases into 2 categories. What is the 2 categories? One is serious and the other one is non-serious. The serious AEFIs would be things like, your death, hospitalization, disability, congenital anomaly, and things like that. So that will be one serious cases. And of course, the non-serious cases would be things like, pain at injection site, fever, etc. Now, please remember, you may report about 1,000 adverse events after immunization, but only about 5 of them may need to be getting investigated, because we only investigate serious AEFI cases. We don't investigate all AEFI cases. And when you mean by investigation, what is the difference between reporting and investigation? Reporting means you're just collecting essential information about the patient. That's it. And also about the vaccine, etc. But when you look at investigation, you're actually collecting all the details about that event. What really led to that particular event? You really dig into the details. And there is a site visit, field visit, etc. And that's what there is a stage of analysis where data is collected, is actually analyzed. And then afterwards, what we do is the details of that investigation is sent to a group, which is actually a committee, as you see at position. So these are the people who determine whether the vaccine is connected to the event or not. So I'll just stop there. So this entire whole spectrum together is actually what we call as the vaccine safety, especially after the vaccine enters the market, after the vaccine reaches the ground. But please remember, this is not just the vaccine safety per se, because even before the vaccine enters into the market, there is a huge process of licensing. There's a set of clinical trials, etc., which is actually done with a very rigorous and rigid method, and also with extreme quality control to make sure that a good quality vaccine is being supplied before it enters into the market. So what you're seeing on the screen is once the vaccine enters into the market, we call what you're seeing on the screen as post-marketing surveillance. That means after the vaccine has entered into the market, this is how the system actually works. Over, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madhava. If you're just joining us, warm welcome to you. We are here today with Madhava Ram Balakrishnan, a medical officer from WHO headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland. And if you have any questions, go ahead, type your questions in the chat. My eyes will be on the chat to listen to your question. My next question to you, Madhava, is who are the key stakeholders that should be involved in vaccine safety? Why should an immunization professional at the health facility or district level be concerned about vaccine safety?
Thanks, Charlotte. That's a very interesting question. Actually, if you just look at it, the point where vaccine safety starts is actually not at the time when the injection is being given. If you just look at it, the place where the vaccine safety starts is a place where the first contact with the patient and the vaccinator comes into existence. It is very, very important for the vaccinator. Now, please remember, when you look at a vaccinator, the profile of the vaccinator can be totally different. You have people who are healthcare workers who kind of visit you at the house. They may be just finishing schools, and they may be the people who may be coming to your house and giving you the vaccine. You can even have people who finished their medicine, who are really professionals and all that. They can also be giving the vaccine. But whoever it is who are actually going to be administering the vaccine, the number one thing they need to know is actually they need to know what the vaccine, they need to know all the details about the vaccines. Now, coming to this, how do you get the details about the vaccine? Now, please remember, you need, before vaccination, there is something called a package insert inside each of the vaccine. The person must be very thorough by knowing what is the vaccine, what is the dose it has to be administered, what are the indications, what are the contraindications, and what are the precautions which needs to be taken. It is not enough if you just know about it, but also the most critical thing which most of us human beings miss when at the time of vaccination is actually communicating that effectively and efficiently to the vaccine recipient or the guardian, because this is where most of the failure actually takes place. People need to be informed. Okay, if you take this vaccine, number one, what is it going to protect you against? Number two, what is it going to, what is the kind of adverse events which can be anticipated? And what is the probability of me getting that particular adverse event? So this is what you really need to know. Now, the other thing which also, this is one group of people who vaccinate. Then now the next set of people are the people who report. Now, please remember, the people who report adverse events, they need to know, they need to know very clearly what are the kind of adverse events which can occur with different types of vaccines. Now, please remember, when you look at vaccines, like the traditional vaccines, like, your BCG, DTP, measles, etc., there is a standard set. We are very familiar with the kind of adverse events which can happen. But when you look at newer vaccines, like COVID vaccine, for instance, any new event should be, if it has occurred, if it is temporarily related to vaccination, you should suspect it to be an adverse event and it should get reported. So this is the next thing with regard to the reporting. With regard to the investigation, usually we have teams which go to the ground and investigate those cases. They need to be trained. It is not enough if you, not every Tom, Dick and Harry can just go and just conduct an investigation. No, not at all. When you go for an investigation, you should be going with a very clear idea. What is the event which I'm investigating? What are the kind of questions? Who are the people who I should be meeting? Now, what are the kind of questions I should ask each of those persons? Which are the sites which I should visit? Should I look at the cold chain, etc., etc.? There is a huge process involved in that. And of course, when you look at data analysis, we need epidemiologists there who will be able to tell you three things: the time, the place, and the person. You need to do an epidemiological analysis to look for trends. And then when you, of course, when you look at that causality assessment committee, what you see at the 10 o'clock position, those people need to be trained. Do you know that WHO has actually got a specific method to do causality assessment for adverse events following immunization? You can just go to Google and just type AEFI causality assessment. You'll be able to get all the details on that. So please remember, it is not like one set of skills is enough for one set of people, but there are heterogeneous skills and there are multiple people and stakeholders involved here. Over. Back to you, Charlotte.
Thank you so much for that detailed and elaborate answer, Madhava. I can see already a good number of questions here in the chat. Here is a quick one from Samuel Ajansen. Can he call for, he says, for the non-serious, can I call it mild? So can we talk of mild AFI?
Brilliant question, Samuel. I really appreciate you for asking this thing. Now, remember something, we use the word minor and actually severe. Okay. Now, so again, there is again serious and non-serious. So there are specific terminologies which are actually being used. Now, the minor AEFIs are what we call as actually the one which I just told you as pain and etc. etc. Now, the severe, which you can even call as mild if you want to, quote unquote mild, you can call it. But remember something, a severe AEFI can be something which is based on the severity and not based on, so you can get a severe AEFI in the sense severe pain at injection site. For instance, after vaccination, I can even get a severe rash. You understand? I can get a rash on the body, but it does not mean a pain at injection site would need to be hospitalized or a rash will have to be hospitalized. Whereas if you look at a serious AEFI, the definition is pretty clear. It can occur only because of 5 reasons. Number 1 is death, disability, hospitalization, congenital anomaly, or any other medically significant event. So this is how we kind of classify this adverse event in real life. And only, as I told you earlier, only the serious ones are investigated, the others are not investigated. But another thing which we also investigate is if people feel or the community feels that it is a significant event which needs to be investigated, then of course, even if the person is not hospitalized, we will still conduct the investigation. One example would be something like a cluster of events which can take place, which may not result in hospitalization, but would still be significant for investigation. Back to you, Charlotte.
Thank you. There is a question here from Dr. Manisha Danan. Even though our topic for today, just to remind those who are just joining us, we are talking about vaccine safety, a practical perspective with Dr. Madhava from WHO. So Dr. Manisha Danan asks the difference between messenger RNA vaccine and DNA vaccine. I know it may not directly be related, but I just have the responsibility of sharing the questions. Can you say something about that, Madhava?
No, I'm not an expert on that. I would kind of, because I do know what it is about, but since I'm not an authority on that subject, I would kind of request that question be answered. We have experts who deal only with this. So we can probably have, during the next call, we can organize something with an expert who can actually answer that question much better than me, please.
Thank you very much. I would like to go to the question from Sadiki, who says, what are the indicators for the reporting of AFI based on severity?
So now I won't say that based on severity. We only use the word based on seriousness. What are the indicators which are responsible for reporting in terms of seriousness? Because you know, this, for instance, mild AEFI is actually very difficult to quantify. But on the other hand, serious AEFIs are actually pretty easy to quantify, because those 5 conditions which we are actually looking for is actually very crystal clear. Death is clear, hospitalization, disability, all those things that are very clear case definition. So it's easy for us to classify cases into, categorize cases into serious. Now, there is a very, very important indicator for serious AEFIs. That is, every district, every province, every country has got a particular indicator which we keep, which WHO monitors and even countries monitor. It is actually the number of serious AEFI cases which is reported per million total population. So the numerator is actually the number of serious AEFI cases reported. The denominator is the total population, and the multiplying factor is 1 million. So this is what we do. And this is and very important. I'm glad this question was asked. This is an important indicator which is used for monitoring the vaccine safety as per the Immunization Agenda 2030.
Thank you so much. And talking about indicators, we think of data. So we have a question from Bawani Shankar that says, Dr. Madhava, as per global data today, what percentage of vaccine recipients suffer serious AFI or are expected to suffer serious AFI? It is important that as communicators, we are prepared with this knowledge.
Absolutely, absolutely. So among all the AEFIs, as I said, you know, when you look at AEFIs, it is actually a full spectrum. When you look at the full spectrum, even if you just look at the AEFI surveillance cycle, among the AEFI surveillance cycle, what you see over here, the number of the AEFI might get detected, but it may not be notified. It might get notified, but it may not get reported. So this is something which you have to keep in mind. So when you just a minute, please. I'll just come. There is a little bit of a disturbance. Just a second. Can you just close your hand in the middle of a very important point?
Okay, and while we are waiting for Madhava, just want to. Okay, great to have you back. Please go ahead.
So as I was just telling you, can you just go back to that? Yes. So what happens is this thing about the serious AEFI. When you just look at it, the proportion of cases which among the proportion of cases get reported, I would say about between 1 to 5% would be serious, depending on the context. Now, remember something, the reporting itself is very skewed based on the kind of trainings received by that particular set of healthcare workers. It need not be like everybody reports in a very uniform manner. Some of these people might get informed, and they may even think of it as serious, because, you know, conditions like disabilities are very subjective between one person to the other person. Therefore, it becomes very difficult.
Okay, thank you, Madhava. And we are already out of the 15 minutes for the lightning chat are already gone. But judging from the number of questions and experiences shared, number of questions that we have in the chat, it's obvious that this is a topic that is of great interest to immunization professionals. So we are going to go a few minutes over so that Dr. Madhava can answer as many questions as possible. And I'd like to encourage our Francophone peers that are in the room. You can also ask your questions in the French language or raise your hand to speak. Now, there is this question from Samuel Maloge Badiekan. He asks, what is the criteria for defining an AFI as serious and non-serious, considering a relative reaction of different persons to the vaccine component? I think you already elaborated on that, but there is also a comment from Mishra. He says, anything is not mentioned on data sheet is serious and requires investigation. Monitoring of AFI was contracted to an independent organization. After receiving notification from health professionals, parents can directly report online. Organizations do the investigation and look into all the visits or medicine that was prescribed by health professionals in the last 6 months. This is reported to the Ministry of Health. Also, this will differ among countries how the reporting system has been set up. So I think this is an experience that is being shared by Mishra. Madhava, what do you think about this experience shared?
Right. So actually, when you just look at that, can you just go back to that critical slide number 4, please? Yes. So when you just look at it, please remember one thing. When you look at the investigation per se, after reporting, I told you very clearly that then there is a stage of investigation. When you look at that particular investigation per se, among the serious cases, you should remember the investigations are done. But then you may get, for instance, like measles vaccine, for instance, can cause febrile seizures, for which you need to get a person hospitalized. But the kind of detailed investigation which you need to do, for instance, in that kind of a situation need not be as elaborate as if there is a death after a measles vaccination. Because if a death occurs after a measles vaccination, particularly, you know, some of you must have heard about this condition called toxic shock syndrome, you know, where, you know, the vaccine is not stored in a proper temperature. The vaccine is actually administered after 6 hours instead of being administered within 6 hours. It's exposed to contaminants and all that. And then if it is administered, you can find that there is a cluster of events, and some of those events can kind of result in death. In those kind of situations, the kind of investigation which you do will be very, very elaborate. Whereas if you just look at a standard kind of a known event, like which is not that, I mean, very serious, not resulting in death and all, you can actually stop that investigation at the hospital itself. You really don't need to go into community level investigations in those cases. Over.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we are going to have a last question from the chat, and then I'll also have my own last question for you before we separate. Fodaya says, Dr. Madhava, there have been issues of non-reported cases of AFIs, adverse events, even when the signs and symptoms are clearly manifest themselves in vaccines or patients. How do we handle or improve on such situations once they occur? So an issue of non-reporting, under-reporting.
See, why do people, we should ask ourselves this question, why do people not report? That is a very important question to ask. One of the things which people do not report, one is, they don't know. That is one thing which happens, which means that what they can do is basically with regard to training. This is where we talk about training and capacity building. But then there are some people who know, but then they still do not report. Why? Because there is always, many of the times, there is a fear among healthcare workers that they can get prosecuted. I have actually been in situations where the health worker was not to be blamed. But then what happens is, at the time of vaccination, you find that, you know, the whole community comes together. Sometimes it becomes a police case, and then it becomes a big hue and cry. So then what happens is, then there is a tendency to hide these kind of reports. But unfortunately, this is not at all to be encouraged, because this is strongly to be discouraged. Because let me tell you something very frankly, it is well known that vaccines are safe, but definitely if you, very, very rarely, at the rate of about 1 in 1 million doses and things like that, can cause anaphylaxis and death. But it doesn't mean that the health worker was at fault. But then it takes a lot of time and maturity for the system to understand that this is not the healthcare worker's issue. So these are we need to really understand what is the underlying cause in each of those circumstances and make sure that we are kind of reporting. Back to you, Charlotte.
Thank you so much. My question to you now is, one of the common reasons given by caregivers for refusing vaccination is the fear of AFIs. This usually puts health workers in the dilemma when it comes to communicating with communities about this. How much information should immunization professionals give to caregivers and communities on vaccine safety and adverse events that will lead them to accept vaccination? Where is the sweet spot when it comes to communication around vaccine safety and AFIs?
Right. So the thing which we should always remember is, it's very, very important to be honest. Okay. From the health worker's perspective, I'm looking at the orange arrow here. At the time of vaccination, the health worker must be really honest, but at the same time, and very, very practical. At the same time, you know, the thing is, what one should not do is, one should not try to hide that this cannot cause these events. On the other hand, it's very important to tell, by doing this particular vaccination, your chances of getting this adverse event is this. For example, if you just look at let us take an example of this thrombocytopenia syndrome. If you, after COVID vaccination, if you take the vaccine, the chances of you getting the thrombocytopenia syndrome might be 1 in 100,000 or 1 in 200,000 doses of vaccine. But if you get COVID, the chances of you getting this kind of conditions would be something like 1 in 50 or 1 in 100 people with COVID get this particular condition. So this is the risk versus benefit which needs to be very clearly articulated at the time of vaccination. In fact, what I strongly feel is, at the time of vaccination, it's very important to get a group of people together, answer the questions personally one-to-one or with the vaccine recipients, clarify all the questions which they have before you actually, and before the consent for vaccination is actually given and vaccines are actually administered. So this is what it is, just to make sure that people understand what they are going to get, what are the risks involved, and most importantly, what are the benefits of vaccination. So this is what really needs to be addressed. Back to you, Charlotte.
Okay, thank you. There is a question in French from one of our Francophone participants this year. He asks, are there thresholds when it comes to AFI when it comes to AFI, whether they be non-severe or severe? So let me just read it in French for clarity for the francophone. Bonjour, y a-t-il des seuils de cas de MAPI par vaccin selon qu'il soit mineur ou grave? So is there some kind of like threshold values when it comes to what to expect as AFIs, whether they be minor or severe or mild or severe?
Okay, thanks for this. It's a very, very important question. Now, please remember something. As far as we are concerned, look at that image, what you're seeing on the screen. The minute we are, from our point of view, we will not filter any cases. From the WHO standpoint, standpoint, we do not and tell people, oh, as soon as someone comes to us, oh, no, this is not an event, and we don't try to push it off, not at all. On the other hand, what we do is, event, what you see is notified, like what you see at 3 o'clock position on the screen. If it is notified to the health system, it has to be reported, which means if it is brought to the notice of a health worker, to a nurse, a pharmacist, or a doctor, what will have to happen is that 1-page reporting form will have to be completed, and it has to be documented as an advertisement. There's no question of trying to filter it as a case or not. So this is what we have to do. Over, back to you.
Okay, once again, thank you very much, Dr. Madhava, for joining us for this lightning chat. And as you heard, it is a lightning chat, rapid fire Q&A session. So we cannot possibly answer all of your questions just in one session. But if you are interested in the topic, you want to learn more, there it's a key resource that I'm sharing right now in the chat. You can click on that link to refer yourself to the resource. If you have additional questions, go ahead, click on the links that my colleague Zah has just shared in the chat to ask your questions. Also, if you can go to slide 7, you'll see that we have more lightning chats that have been planned just for you. In fact, tomorrow we will be having another lightning chat with Lisa Manning from WHO on what drives confidence and uptake. That is an introduction to the behavioral and social drivers of vaccination. You don't want to miss this, and I am sure you would like to see the questions you have around this topic answered. So please also go ahead and ask your questions. You are going to receive the link to join this session through the various channels and the media that we use to share information. Continue to keep your eyes on our different platforms for the links and the times for this chat, and do not forget to let us know how we can do better. Thank you once again, Madhava, for joining us today and for answering my questions and our questions. I wish you all an excellent day, evening, depending on where you're joining from, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.